everyone, it's Ashley with Posh Crochet Patterns, and in today's video will be about let's get more comfortable crocheting with velvet yarn. And why is it so hard to crochet with velvet yarn? Can it get easier? And when I crochet, I cannot find my chains and my stitches. And those are very common problems that all crocheters, all levels of crocheters come across, whether it's beginner or intermediate or advanced crocheters. Sometimes we just come across a type of yarn that is more difficult than the rest, and that normally happens with velvet yarn. With my experience, even being an advanced crocheter, velvet yarn is the one yarn that gives me problems. And it's not every velvet yarn. It always tends to be the bulkier, darker colored yarn. And I have a few examples here. One example here, this is the yarn that I have the most trouble crocheting. And it's not just the brand, it's the color. The color is so dark and blends together so well that it just makes it hard. It makes it hard to see the chains. It makes it hard to see the stitches. Sometimes it's hard to get the exact stitch count right with this color yarn. This is a bulky 6 yarn. I'm going to show you the label. This is Premier Just Chenille. I purchased this from Dollar Tree, which is a great buy, for the type of yarn. It's very, very soft. It's very soft. It's a bulky 6, actually a super bulky 6. Right here, it says super bulky 6. That's the yarn weight. And then right here, where the crochet hook is, this is the recommended hook size for this yarn, which is an 8mm crochet hook. See, also this ball comes with 65 yards. It's 100% polyester. Let's see if it's got, oh, here we go. Machine wash warm, lay flat to dry. So this is the yarn that I always have trouble with, this color. It's also black. This one right here, which I purchased from Hobby Lobby, this is Yarn Bee, Velvety Smooth Sparkle in the color Blush. Very pretty yarn, very soft. In this yarn, in the color Black, I have a hard time distinguishing my stitches. This one right here, I do not have the label, but this is also a Yarn Bee yarn. I also purchased this from Hobby Lobby. So this is Yarn Bee Velvety Plush. And this is actually very easy to crochet with. I don't know if you can see that well. There you go. But it's a thinner, smaller velvet yarn, but this is very easy to crochet with. I have some demonstrations here. And this is the, see if it can focus right. There we go. This is the Yarn Bee Velvety Plush. And these are double crochet stitches. And this pretty granny square that I made, this is made from this brand yarn in the color olive, ivory, and blush in this brand. And this yarn, this is made from this brand yarn, just a different color. This blue was a lot easier to see the chains on top to make the stitches. It's not too hard to use this type of yarn. But I wanted to give everyone some tips. When crocheting with velvet yarn, especially if you're new to it, I would recommend using a larger size hook. For this right here, let's see, I used my 4.25 millimeter crochet hook to make these double crochets out of this yarn. And for this, I used, let's see, I believe this one's the right one. Yep. I used a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook for this. And you can see that you can see the chains very, very well. And with this, I used, this is a size 5 millimeter hook. It doesn't have the engravings of the size. It was on the handle, but I'd sliced off the handle and removed the handle. So this was made from the size 5. I just made it a little looser. I didn't make it very tight at all. That way it would be easier for me to see each stitch. But I do want to demonstrate how this yarn is, and tips to help too. So this is the yarn that's difficult for me. Let's see, here we go. See if we can get down a little bit closer. If you are new to crocheting with velvet yarn, what I would recommend is using a larger hook. Now this recommends a size 8. This is a size 8 millimeter crochet hook. And again, I removed the handle so it doesn't have the size engraved in it. But this is a size 8. And it's always easier to see the chains with a larger hook. And here the chains are big enough so you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That one right there. So you can see these better with a size 8. Now if I use a smaller hook, let's see, let's try size 6. This is a size 6 millimeter hook. And that's what the chains look like with a size 6, which sometimes they blend so well together that it's hard to really figure out which chain is which. If I was to go to a smaller hook size, it would be a lot harder. I'm going to go back to the size 8. Now, if you are making single crochets with velvet yarn, it will be harder to count your stitches, and the reason why is because they'll be so small. And let me show you here. What did I do? Oh, here we go. Okay, excuse me. For example, this little swatch here. If I'm having trouble counting the chains on top, I can just go right here and see, oh, okay, this is a double crochet, that's a double crochet, and so is that, that, and that, and I can count across that way to make sure my stitch count is correct. So just imagine if you're single crocheting, it will make it a little difficult. So what you could do is use a stitch marker. If you feel comfortable enough that you can count across without any distraction and know, okay, well, I made 8 single crochets. Oops, sorry about that, it's my hair. And if you know that you can do that, you know, then you don't have to worry about going back and counting your stitches. But if you're like me, I always have to go back and count. I got so much on my mind that I just got too much on my mind, you know. I get distracted. Even while I'm, you know, really into crocheting, I still miscount sometimes. So if you have a hard time, then I would just add stitch markers to each stitch. So we know right here is a stitch. And I'm just using yarn because it's a lot faster. If I used my little bitty stitch markers, it would take me a little bit of time to really work it in the chain. So if you do have trouble recognizing your stitches, then I would definitely recommend counting as you go along. Each row, I would get a piece of paper and I would write down 1 row, and then once you finish the second row, write 2, you know, just to help keep track, because you know, daily life and everything, and especially once you get further along, it it's sometimes it's just hard to remember where you left off. And also another thing is when you're crocheting with velvet yarn and you're making single crochets, it is harder to count your rows, and that's because it's so small and it just all blends together. So I always like to leave a stitch marker at the last stitch of my row to keep track of my row count. And see, you can do that. I mean, it doesn't look attractive, but who's gonna see it? I just accidentally pulled that out. Let's see. But I want you to get comfortable with crocheting with velvet yarn, because that cute little flower granny square I showed you all, excuse me, here soon I will be teaching how to make that and how to make a headband. So very, very soon we will be learning to crochet that. And I thought that would be really nice to make with spring coming up really soon. So see, if you're having a hard time, then okay, well, my stitch marker is right here. So I know that's my stitch. And that might help. Instead of giving up, do not give up. You will get used to this. You will, I promise. It just seems a little difficult at first with this type of yarn, but it's not hard at all. You will find your way, I promise. And again, I wanted to show you all this real quick. Isn't that pretty? I think it's really pretty. So here soon, I will be showing you all how to make this. And these right here, I just left these on here because in the pattern, we'll need 4 stitch markers. And I used yarn as stitch markers for the corners. So, and this is the back, which the back even looks good too. But this is the front. And if you all want to get the exact same yarn that I used for this, for the upcoming tutorial, it is this brand yarn in the color Blush, Ivory for the flower, and Olive for the center. And we will be making several of these and stitching them together to form a headband. So it'll be quite lovely. It will. And let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about with the velvet yarn. Just remember, if you use a smaller hook, then it will be a little bit more difficult to see your chains and your stitches. If you use a larger hook, it'll make it easier. Also, make sure you count your stitches as you go. And use stitch markers too. Stitch markers are a lifesaver. And also, to keep track of your rows, just write it down. Just keep a small piece of paper nearby, jot it down, because eventually you're going to take a break, and eventually you're going to walk away, and you're going to handle a bunch of stuff at home or at work, and you may totally forget what row you're on. So that's a good tip to use. Also, using yarn as a stitch marker to mark the end of each row. So last stitch of each row, place a stitch marker in it. That will also help you to keep track of your rows. That way you know this is row 1, that's row 2, and then row 3, and so on. So that'll help you. And also don't give up. Just keep trying, and don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. And let's see, is there anything else? I think I about covered it. So hopefully this video helps you all, and hopefully you all practice, get comfortable with the yarn, and hopefully here soon you'll join me in making this beautiful granny square and turning it into a headband. It's very, very pretty, very nice. Thank you all. Good night.